My go-to brow brush is the Sephora brand number 22. I've been using this brush for over 10 years at this point. I actually have 3 of them. You might be able to tell, but this one over here is the oldest one. The one in the middle I got, I don't know, a few years ago, and then this one over here is the newest one. I love this brush because it's great for hair-like strokes, which you can tell if you turn an angled brush to the side, like how thin it'll be able to make its lines. So as you can see, it's very sleek, perfect for eyebrow hairs. With my oldest one, you can see I even trimmed some of the hairs because they get frayed a bit over time. In addition to the very thin angled brush, I like to use a bit of a fluffier, thicker angled brush. Here are 2 examples of what I'm talking about. Next to the Sephora brush, you can see it's thicker. For other materials, I'm going to be using a spoolie. I like to use the thinner ones. They look like this. However, you can use a thicker one. They're easier to find. I actually have designated makeup washcloths that I use to wipe off my brushes when I'm doing my makeup, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to use a paper towel. My eyebrow hairs love to grow in inconvenient directions. In the front, my hairs are growing up, but then around here, they start growing down. So they're slanted like downwards. The soap eyebrow trend doesn't work for my hairs. I just haven't found a product that gives me that fluffy vibe. If my hairs were fluffed up, like, it would look a little ridiculous. I think I might look like the Grinch or something. So to prep my eyebrows, I just go through them with the spoolie. This gets out any little flakes of skin or bits of makeup from my foundation. I don't want to disturb the surrounding foundation. I just want to brush through the area with hair. I'm just going to trim a little bit. For this video, I'm not going to go too in depth with how I pluck and shape my natural brows, but I basically just kind of chop off any little hairs that are not cooperating with me because I don't have the patience. I feel like there's been a big push into brow gels and even like brow pens and stuff, but just nothing just hits the same for me as a pomade. Don't judge me. I'm not necessarily stuck in 2016, but I do use ABH Dip Brow for my brows in the shade Ebony. This specific dip brow is a few years old, but it still works great, okay? I use a palette knife to take out some of the product, then I deposit it on the inside of the cap. I'm using my brush to spread that around the surface. I'm starting with the thicker angled brush. I'm just taking a little bit of the product. I don't want too much on the brush right now. If I find that it's too dry, that I'm having trouble working with it, I just add a tiny bit of foundation or concealer to give it a little bit of hydration, and that usually works for me. I like to start right here, not in the front part of my brow, but kind of the darkest, most dense spot in my eyebrow is where I start. I pretty much like to stick with like the basic natural shape of my brows, so I'm just very lightly filling them in. I'm not adding any more product to the brush, I'm just very lightly going through because I want to get down the shape that I'm going for. If you're really having trouble with the shape of your brows, there are charts that you can follow that kind of show you like the measurements of where your arc can be and where your brow should start and end, but those are just approximations. You can really just follow what you like best or your natural shape or, whatever you want. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point. This is just the first step. I like to extend the arch out a little bit and bring it out here at the end. There's barely any product like coming off of my brush at this point, so now I am going through the front of my brow. I don't like to use a ton of product in the front part of my brow because that can give like a blockier type look. So if you want your brows to be blocky, like that's not my business, but I like to go in once there's not that much product on my brush and just lightly go through the front. I'm gonna pause. At this point, my brows looking pretty good. I'm a perfectionist and also I film close-up videos of my eye, so I like my brow to look a bit more polished. Sometimes I go back in with my spoolie in case I need to smooth out any areas of product, in case I added a little bit too much in some area. I'm gonna switch brushes to my Sephora number 22. Unlike with the previous brush, this time I'm really saturating the bristles with a lot of product. This next part is important. So I'm going to be putting my brush in between my paper towel. So I'm putting it in and folding it over like this. I'm using my fingers to put some pressure where the brush is and then squeezing as I pull the brush out. This makes the brush even thinner than it was before, and it's ideal for hair strokes. I'm going to show you on my hand first. So basically I fill up the brush with product and then use the paper towel to squeeze out the excess product and press the bristles together to make them nice and thin. Again, I'm starting where my eyebrow hair is the most dense and I'm adding some little strokes. I'm continuing by defining this line at the bottom of my eyebrows. Once I get past the arch over here, I'm kind of making the hair strokes go out a bit. It might be different for your eyebrow, but I like to add hair strokes going down from the top. So I'm starting over here. In the more sparse areas, I'm using more pressure and also doing more stroke motions. The hardest part for me with my brows is like this outer edge over here, so I usually have to turn to the side so I can see it and make some hair strokes over here too. I already did a little bit, but I like to use little tiny strokes to extend the tail of my brow. I'm trying to get out of the habit of doing an angry face when I'm filling in my brows because I don't want to get wrinkles, but it's really hard for me. Like making an angry face just makes it so much easier for some reason. I also add just a couple strokes here in the front of my brow. I'm using a tiny bit of concealer. I find that less is really more with this. I'm really lightly cleaning up the edge. You don't need a lot of concealer or foundation or whatever you want to use. Just a little bit. This is my favorite concealer brush. It's from P. Louise. I also like to use plain old art brushes. This is a really cheap paintbrush that I got at Michael's, and I use this sometimes as well. To finish it up, we're adding a little bit of gel. This is e.l.f. When applying the gel, I'm just focused on making my hairs go in the same direction as best as I can. But I am following the natural growth pattern. Like if I try to make them go up like this, it's just not gonna work. It's just not gonna work for my hairs. And here we have it, my finished brow versus my naked brow. I hope that my eyebrow tutorial helps you, especially if you're a beginner. Any brow related questions, advice, product recommendations, I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.